In today's transmission, I talk about the rebels and the misfits, and how society often tries to tear them down. I talk about seeing things from other people's perspectives, and I talk about what the heck a spiritual awakening is. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Good to see you again. Welcome back to the cult. I'm Matt Owens, of course, in case that wasn't obvious. I've got a podcast for those of you that have been living under a rock and haven't heard the news yet. And upon lots of reflection, I'm trying to use Instagram less often. I'm trying to find more balance in my life whenever I can, and I just find myself on Instagram way too often. And so I feel like I'm shifting gears away from that, and I want to instead start focusing on the podcast. I've been sending out all these transmissions across just all of the platforms. But I find that it's exhausting, and I just would like to focus more on one platform and doing the podcast. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm still going to post some content occasionally on Instagram or YouTube for those of you that are like, wait, don't go away. I'm not going away. I'll still post stuff on Instagram and YouTube. But the bulk of my content is going to start going over to Spotify. And so if you're interested in my content, if you like what I'm doing here, if you want to hear what's going on in my life, if you're a little nosy and you just want to hear what's going on in my life, follow me on Spotify. It's a cult of misfits. And my goal is to get to 100 followers. And so you can help me out by doing that. So go ahead and head over to Spotify and hit follow for me. And I'm going to start posting more of my content, most of my content over there. Okay, enough about that. Let's talk about my walk today. That's far more interesting. Actually, my walk yesterday, I caught the eclipse. So for those of you that caught it, quite magical. I love it. I love myself a good eclipse. It's often sunny here, or it's often cloudy here, and so I was wondering if I was going to get a peek at it, and it was cloudy, but it peeked through for a minute or two, and I got to check that bad boy out, so that was fun. And then on my walk today, no eclipse. That was a bit of a letdown for me, but still had a good walk. I was thinking about being a rebel. I've often considered myself a rebel. I just feel like I don't like following the rules. I just sort of want to do things my own way. Just I'd like to think I'm the cool loner over in the corner, just smoking a cigarette, just doing whatever the fuck he wants. But it's a little more nuanced than that. But I started thinking about rebels in society and how we often, either in Hollywood or our stories, or we sort of lift up these rebels as being the heroes. In Star Wars, the rebels were the good guys. And then I thought about Jackie Robinson, which I never understand when a sports reference pops into my head because I just don't think about sports. So I'm like, okay, Jackie Robinson, that's interesting. But Jackie Robinson or Galileo, just these people that go against the grain, go against the status quo, right? Thinking in a new and different way. And we glorify these people as heroes, daring to go against society, or daring to stand up and say their truth, or, they're so brave to be able to do that. But I started thinking that we only lift these people up in retrospect. Once enough time, perhaps a generation or two has passed, we start to think like, wow, those guys were really brave. I really respect that guy or that girl for doing that. But the truth is, if you're one of those people, Jackie Robinson, Galileo, Matt Owens, maybe you, they're not regarded as heroes often in their own lifetime. Oftentimes they're met with confusion, It's a broad spectrum. Oftentimes they're met with anger, right? Because they're going against the status quo. And the truth is, most people want the status quo. They want everything to be nice and cozy, keep it like it is. Society will run just fine if we all just stay in line and follow the rules. But there's some people that are born that don't really operate that way. Me being one of them. Much to the frustration of those that want the status quo. Sorry, guys. But it takes those rebels, it takes those types of people in order for society to move forward, in my opinion. Right? Otherwise, things get stagnant, complacent. And there's no growth in that complacency, in that stagnancy. And so it often takes the rebel to sort of jumpstart things, to sort of show people there's a different way of thinking, perhaps, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of correlation in being the rebel and a spiritual awakening. And I can only speak for my own spiritual awakening, which I'm about to do. But it's about embracing the misfit in you. I've never felt like I really truly fit in. It was always difficult for me in my youth because I never cared about sports. And for most men, it seems like, if you don't talk about sports or care about sports, then what else is there? Right? I would tell people that I don't care about sports. Other guys would say like, oh, what are you into? Football, basketball? I'm like, well, no, none of those things. Well, you're not watching the game? And I'm like, I don't know what the game is. Highlight? Well, what is the game? I have no idea. So I never felt like I fit in with, being the macho guy. I never felt like I fit in spiritually, right? I grew up in a Christian household. A lot of my family is Christian. And I never really truly embraced that. Much to the consternation of my parents, who have told me they think I'm going to hell. They're scared for my salvation. That's all right. Because I like to look at Eastern philosophies. I like to look into magic. I like to look into all the stuff you're not supposed to look into according to the Bible. I like to think for myself. I don't like to be told what to do. I don't care if it's, the government or the Bible or my parents or God himself. Don't tell me what to do. And God created me that way. He knows He knows exactly what I'm like. I used to be real embarrassed about who I am, and now I know who I am, and I'm confident, and I love myself. Don't tell me what to do. That's just who I am. Love you, Matt Owens. And now I know that about myself. And so for me, the spiritual awakening was learning to love aspects of myself. For me, the spiritual awakening was not just one thing. It was many things, right? And is still ever eternally unfolding, I believe. Not just in this lifetime. This awakening process, I believe, is eternal for my soul, for the aspect of divinity that I am. And so for me, a spiritual awakening was getting to know myself better. Who am I? What am I really? I thought that I was a Christian. I thought that I was a white male living in America with 2 kids, and I have these beliefs and those beliefs. And who am I? Part of my spiritual awakening was looking within and learning to love aspects of myself that I had never loved before. Learning to embrace those parts of myself, the shadow, the darkness that I don't want to talk about. Learning to be more vulnerable and talking about it in front of other people. Gaining confidence in myself. Learning not to care what other people think. Learning not to compare myself to others. This is all part of the spiritual awakening for me. Learning to have patience, to be kind to myself. which then in turn allows me to be kind to others. Learning not to judge myself so that I don't then in turn judge others. Learning to see things in a different perspective. Never done that before. I always had real strong perspectives. And my perspectives were right and yours were idiotic. And that's just the way that it is. And it's learning to shed that and to realize that there are many different perspectives and there is no right or wrong. Right and wrong are just a perspective. Think about that for a minute. Once I learned to stop identifying with my perspectives and my beliefs and attaching my sense of who I am, my sense of self to those things, I was then able to take the next step to be able to hear somebody else's opinion and not be attached to it. That's freedom. Part of a spiritual awakening for me is freedom, freeing myself from these attachments that I had to who I am, what I believe. And once I started doing these things in my life, alchemizing these things, transforming, transmuting these things in my heart, in my thought patterns, in my belief systems, I started transforming into something new. I had become a pretty butterfly, guys. And I thought I was beautiful as hell, this new version of myself. But what I didn't realize is those people in my life that had been around the whole time were used to the old version of me, the caterpillar version of me. And many of them wanted that caterpillar version back. Many of them didn't like the butterfly version of me. And they let me know. They let me know they weren't fans. Because where we used to agree on things, where we used to have similar belief systems, where we used to have similar thought patterns, similar programming, I had taken a different path. And that upset many people. That triggered many people. That bothered many people in my life. Friends, family, and otherwise. People that I really cared about. And it was very difficult to overcome that for me and to work my way through that. But that's what a part of the spiritual awakening is too. It's not all love and light. Anybody who's had a spiritual awakening, who's gone through this process of stripping away, of going through the fire, of diving deep, they'll tell you it's not for the faint of heart. That's what therapy does for many people, is it allows you to examine those parts of yourself that you've never examined before. A spiritual awakening, it doesn't have to look one way. It doesn't have to be with, incense and a Buddha statue in the corner while you, say Om for 20 minutes. where you start, seeing things going with the flow, man. Like a spiritual awakening can be anything, right? I'm just speaking for myself here. And there's no need to compare yourself to my spiritual awakening because yours can be completely different. We are all emanations and aspects of the divine experiencing itself. That's what a spiritual awakening is remembering the divinity that you are, that I am. But a part of that process, that stripping away, is extremely painful. Spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, all of the above, all of the things. And it truly is, most people don't want to question things. Most people don't want to look within. Most people don't want to put in the work of healing themselves, healing past traumas, healing programming, facing fears. For me, a large component of the spiritual awakening was learning to face my fears, practicing facing my fears. Because I realized with baby steps, starting small, that once I started to face my fears, my life started getting easier, more smooth, less bumpy. I was less worried and anxious all the time because I started facing the fears, facing the things that were making me worried and stressed all the time. But in order to face that fear, I had to first identify it. Admit to myself that I was actually afraid of something. Because for me, to admit fear was to admit weakness. That was the programming that I was dealing with because of society or my family. I'm not blaming any of them, but it all was components as to why I had that programming. It was about reprogramming it. Taking back control of that programming and saying, I don't want to think that way anymore. I don't want to let this make me afraid anymore. And so for me, it was about facing my fears. One of the very first fears that I faced was my arachnophobia. I had grown up in a household where spiders were the spawn of the devil. They were from hell. They were evil, scary creatures. I'm half being facetious here. I was terrified of spiders. I would squeal at the top of my lungs when I saw one. I would have nightmares about them. It was really intense. And I thought, you know what? I came to a place where I wanted to start facing those fears and getting rid of them because that didn't serve me. Why was I scared of that? So let's see if I can reprogram it. And I did. Successfully. I started out very, very slowly. First, I started not running and screaming out of the room. Okay, that was phase 1. Phase 2 was like getting within a few feet of the spider and just like observing it, letting myself just look at it. And I was terrified the whole time. And I was like, okay, that's good. And then I would kill it. Right? Guys, I like to say I'm more Buddhist now and I revere all life, but I'm also a carnivore. So it's, I don't like to kill bugs and I don't kill bugs intentionally, but I definitely enjoy hamburgers. So, life is complicated, guys. So I got myself slowly over the course of weeks, closer and closer to these spiders, to the point where I could put a glass cup over it and just observe it, get really close to it, knowing it wouldn't like leap on my face and attack me. I had it under a glass cup. And then eventually I worked myself up to a place, after much practice, guys, this didn't happen overnight. I finally got myself to a place where I was like, you know what I'm going to do? This is the final phase for me. I'm going to put my hand next to the spider and I'm going to let it crawl on me. And I know there's those of you that have just stopped listening, and that's okay. I get it. That would have been me a few years ago. But I had to face this fear, and I got myself to a place where I let the spider crawl on me, and I knew for me that signified that I was no longer afraid of them. And I am now. That's not to say I let them crawl all over me, like they're not my pets, guys. But the fact is, I'm just not scared of them anymore. I don't allow them to scare me anymore. I took back control of that. And so then I started thinking, like, if I can do that, like that was a huge, huge, huge deal for me personally to overcome that. And it may sound small and silly to you if you're not scared of spiders, but you definitely have something you're scared of in your life, and you can conquer it as well. I like to tell these stories and be vulnerable because it's good for me, but it's good because it lets you know that, like, you can actually do it. You can actually do anything. So I started this process of systematically, 11:11 on the clock, love you, systematically identifying what my fears were and then going after them. Realizing that, yes, it's terrifying, but also realizing that when I face those fears, I will eventually overcome them because I've done it and I know that it's possible. Then my life will get easier. And so I had a very, 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 very long list of things that scared me, caused me stress and anxiety. I had a lot of social anxiety, scared of death, scared that people were judging me, just a very long list, right? And I just went after those bad boys one at a time. They're all very overwhelming when you look at the list all at once. And so I took them in bites, little baby bites. And I systematically went after them. Spiders, boom. I had a lot of anxiety around my body hatred. I hated the way that I looked. I was very embarrassed of my body. And that was the next one that I went after. I started wearing clothing that made me feel uncomfortable because I felt fat or ugly or whatever. And I started intentionally wearing clothing that was too tight just to say, like, who cares? Who cares what people think? It was just practice. But this is how I started boldly living my life. Because once I conquered that fear, it was so exciting, and I was looking for the next one to conquer. Looking to bring the next one into my crosshairs to make myself invincible, unstoppable. Because my whole life I had told myself the opposite. The voice in my head, which I call Hal had always woven these stories for me about how I'm a worthless piece of shit and I'm never good enough and I could never do that and nobody likes me, etc. And so part of this spiritual awakening for me was as well addressing Hal, addressing that voice in my head. He had taken control of my life, my whole life, and it was about regaining control of the vehicle. Because Hal was always careening us off a cliff. That voice in my head was leading me down a lot of dark alleys, and I didn't like that anymore. And so I took back control of my life. And so you may be going through this as well in your own way. For those of you that are the misfit in your family, perhaps. That's the whole reason why I'm starting these videos and the podcast, is because I feel like a spiritual misfit. I don't fit in anywhere, so I started a fucking cult. That's it. I just wanted a group of misfits to get together and talk about this shit. Because I know that there are people out there who get exactly what the fuck I'm talking about right now. Because in some way you're going through exactly what the fuck I'm going through right now. I'm talking to you. I can feel you right now. Hi. Welcome. Welcome to the club. You're not alone. You're not out there. It's so hard because I have all of these friends on Instagram, these spiritual, friends of mine, where we talk about these things, manifestation and the nature of reality and interdimensional and, ETs and just all that shit, and I found that I'm just the weirdo to my friends and family. To those that knew the caterpillar and not the butterfly. Now my family just, they're kind. They smile and nod, but I don't expect them to understand what I'm talking about a lot of times, right? It gets a little wacky sometimes. That's all right. But I have a thirst to connect with people in this way and talk about these things that I'm experiencing. Because when you talk about a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening or an enlightenment or whatever you want to call it, the spark of divinity, to somebody that hasn't experienced that, it's like talking to a wall. They don't understand. But I get it. It's not that they're idiots or they're sheeple or that they're ignorant. It's none of those things. Because I often have to remind myself that there was a time, I'm not on the mountaintop, first of all, and I never will be, second of all. Third of all, this whole thing is a fucking journey. That's what it is. There is no destination. And I have to realize that there was a time when I was less awake. Because it's not like I'm awake and you're asleep. We live in this binary world, this dualistic, way that we view everything. It's either this or that. Everything is a spectrum. According to the ancient knowledge, the ancient Gnostics, the Egyptians, the spiritual teachers, for thousands of years, they all talked about it. Everything is a spectrum. It is not black and white. It is not yes or no, up or down, left or right. Us versus them. You versus me. And so part of my awakening is reading everything, trying to read everything as a spectrum. Trying to get out of that duality for me. Because there's freedom in the spectrum. Right? If I live in that dualistic world, now I have enemies. Now I have people that disagree with me. Now I have people who don't understand me. Rather than seeing the spectrum, seeing their perspective, and realizing why they're seeing me that way. Why they think I'm the enemy. Why they disagree with me. Why they don't like the way I'm living my life, for example. Okay, that got personal for a minute there, but I just feel like I'm ever evolving. And as I see other people's perspectives, that's evolution for me. I'm evolving more. I can see more of the spectrum now. Ooh. More of the light spectrum. More enlightenment. When you're stuck in a dualistic mindset, you only see black and white. This is just coming to me and it's beautiful. This is what I talk about when I am about channeling. This is just fucking coming through me, and it's not Matt Owens talking. It's something bigger. When you live dualistically, you live in black and white, in binary, rather than seeing the full spectrum of color, the full spectrum of light, the full beauty. You've got blinders on. And so when you ask somebody else's opinion or ask somebody else's perspective, that's a blessing. They're giving you another slice of the spectrum. That's a gift. Beautiful. Ooh, that brought me to tears. Beautiful. This came in very handy for me because I used to be very argumentative. I used to love a good debate. Love telling people why they're wrong. Love showing people my way. I've changed. And I had to go through that for many reasons, right? And perhaps you're going through that or you've gone through that as well. I definitely went through a phase in my life where I got very political. This is another, and see, there isn't just one spiritual awakening. I believe that there's dark nights of the soul, this stripping away, the peeling away of the onion metaphorically, getting to deeper layers within you. There are many of those in a lifetime, perhaps. At least there have been for me. Raise your hand if you got multiple holes on your punch card for the dark night of the soul. Like, been through a few. I'll perhaps talk about a dark night of the soul in a different episode, but if you're curious, look it up. But there are many awakenings, many births, deaths, and rebirths. This idea of the phoenix, rising from the ashes, dying, burning down to ashes, rising again from the ashes. It's all symbolic for us on a personal level in our lives and our spiritual lives, but also on a global and a cosmic level. It's all through infinity, as above, so below situation. And so I just love the constant unfolding of who I am. Because I'm fucking beautiful, guys. And so are you. And if Hal is telling you that you're a piece of shit, put him on mute today. Remind him and remind yourself how amazing you are. And that whatever you're going through is exactly what you're meant to be going through. That in some way, shape, or form, it's a blessing because it's making you bigger and stronger and better. And whatever you're dealing with, you can handle it. And you can get through it. I know that whenever I'm going through a tough time, I forget that. And so it's good to hear it from somebody sometimes. So there you go. Love you very much. End transmission.